is now also going to be having a workshop, which is called Life Is But a Dream, which is all about empowerment up in Montana, June 15th through the 21st. For more information, you can check that out on his website, michaellennox.com. Michael, always beautiful to have you around me. Your energy is uplifting, and it's just awesome to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It is my great pleasure to be here. It really is.
You're one of those beautiful souls that I connected with on Facebook, and I was lucky enough to meet you face to face going to your Dream Circles in LA, which is a meetup that you do that I highly recommend people go to, where you learn a lot more about dreams. And you also offer the service of dream interpretation on your site. You also have a book called Dream Sight that is available on Amazon, as well as your website. Is there anything I'm missing here?
Well, no. I mean, yes and I mean, that is a good overview of what I do. My love for dreams and my love for astrology and my love for helping people have a more dynamic experience of their own unconscious minds on this stunning journey is that's my vision. And I get to do that both as a psychologist, as a dream expert, as an astrologer, as a teacher, and as a blogger, as a writer. So yeah, I have a lot of tools I get to work with and a lot of joy I get to have along the way.
And don't you feel, though, these days it's really good to have a lot of different tools?
Oh gosh, yes. I've been sort of at this a while, and what I've watched is certainly even just over the last 10 years that there's such an explosion of hunger and need and desire in people at large to awaken, to pay attention in such a way that they can navigate through this really difficult time. And, not every tool speaks to every person. People are very unique and individual. And so, yeah, I think it's important to have as many as you possibly can, because different tools and different sensibilities work for different individuals. And even within that one individual person, a different tool on a different day may be what's speaking to you on any given Tuesday as opposed to a Thursday.
Right, and they're all interconnected anyway, and whichever way helps you get the understanding and the insights you need in that moment, all the better.
Absolutely. There's, what's that old phrase? There's, all roads lead to Rome. And of course, the new way of expressing that is, that all roads lead to God. And the reason that's true is because there's only one place to go.
Right. You can take, it's like, I always say you're going A to Z.
Right.
So you can go A, D, E, X, C, Z someday. You're just making more of a adventure.
That's right, and I love that. That's a very sort of adorable analogy, Jennifer, because of course along the way, the more places you go, the more letters you have, the more you can spell.
Exactly. And you don't have to get all the vowels first, so you can make the things with the consonants.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So so with the energy that's really going on right now, there is a lot of things going on energetically. I mean, I know for me, my dreams are getting more intense, more varied. So what is the energy astrology-wise right now?
Well, it's interesting to even for me as an individual on my own journey to consider, why did I even become an astrologer? What attracted to me to it? And what I discovered in my journey of looking into astrology over the last 15, 18 years is that I appreciate astrology personally because I find this energetic experience of being human and being in a body so challenging at times that I like to navigate the weather astrologically because we are in a really squeezy time right now. The best way, I think, to help people understand this, generally speaking, is through talking about Pluto and Uranus. So let's start first with each of those planets and what they represent. Pluto is one of the frequencies of change in the archetype of astrology. And Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and he governs change through destruction and therefore recreation. So Pluto is that energy that will destroy a landscape completely and rebuild a brand new one completely. So wherever Pluto is, that's what he's up to, utter and total change. There's one other frequency of change in the archetype of the planets, and that's Uranus. Uranus, however, is a different kind of change. It's the change of lightning flashes. It's the sudden rug pulling out from under you kinds of shifts and changes that happen very out of the blue and very dynamic fashion. And when these two frequencies of change interact at all, you're talking about total and utter change. So to help understand what they've been doing recently, I like to sometimes point out what it is to think of the moon cycles as it relates to farming. So in the new moon, farmers planted seeds. Why? Because the gravity of the sun and the gravity of the moon are at the same place in the new moon cycle, pulling all of the water and life force energy into the earth, which is better for seeds, right? Makes total sense. Of course, during the full moon, when the energies are pulling out, then the energy, the water is leading more, is being pulled towards the crops. That's when we harvest. But during the new moon, when the two luminaries are at the same place in the sky, we plant a seed. It's the same thing for planets. And when Uranus and Pluto were at the same place in the sky, in a seed planting kind of pull on the Earth consciousness, it was the 1960s. So think about it. Magnificent energy of change aligned in the sky in the same way that a new moon says, plant the seeds now, folks. What were we doing? We were planting the seeds of change. We planted the seeds of the women's movement, of the sexual revolution, of the gay liberation movement, of the anti-war movement. There was the civil rights movement. All of these seeds of change were planted when Uranus and Pluto were in the same place in the sky. So now what Pluto and Uranus are doing, because of the movement of these two planets, they're now squaring each other. They're now 90 degrees away from each other. They're no longer at the same place. They're in a very agitated state in the shape of a square. In the lunar cycle, when the sun and the moon square each other, that's the moment of crisis, when the seeds that you've planted crack open and either germinate and take root or fail to do so and become obsolete. It's a very profound moment in the process of growing the crops that you're harvesting eventually. So that's what's happening now. So even though great changes took place in the 60s, truly it was just the seeds planting, and all that upheaval could be more understood as, in analogy land, as the farmer breaking open old soil. And that's why it was so disruptive, that period of time, because the old soil was just being dug into. And right now is when all of the seeds of change that are ready to crack open, germinate, and take root are beginning to sprout. And so look around us. It's happening. It's happening. Yeah. And I think that's so the square between these two planets started in earnest in 2012, last spring. And because of retrograde movement and the very slow progression of these two planets through space, they're going to stay in this square 90-degree relationship for about 2 years more, about 3 years total. So we are in this pivotal time that's going to continue to feel very chaotic and very challenging. And of course, that's one of the reasons why I think it becomes so important to have a spiritual practice, because this would be a wonderful time to be sort of negative and chaotic and downtrodden and horrified, because there's a lot going on out there. But what are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on that, or are you going to focus on the growth, on the possibility, on the expansiveness, on the increasing love that's available for us? And I think that's the work that you and I do, Jennifer, is to help people focus on the possibility.
The possibility, or at least find the balance of the chaos and the beautiful.
Yeah. We can't create without it. So we might as well learn to appreciate it and not judge it for something that it isn't.
Exactly. Awareness in all areas is a blessing.
Yeah.
It definitely helps you kind of navigate. There is a lot of interesting things having Uranus in Aries right now, which is the first sign.
Yes.
It's a fire sign. It's a lot of energy. It's almost a newbie, though. It's like the baby who wants attention.
You got it.
It's right. I know that one well.
Who wants attention? You know, you give it some, because to not would be both dangerous and cruel.
Right.
But you also limit it, and you create structure and support and stability for it. But you can't change, you're right, you cannot change its essential nature to be fiery, impulsive, spontaneous, and new.
And be a pioneer as well, because in that impulsiveness, they do tend to get some really outrageous ideas for the changes that need to be done, and they're the ones a lot of times that take the step forward to say, yes, let's do this.
Absolutely. Aries, the ram, is fearless in his ability to dive forward into new territory. That is his nature. That is in fact, his purpose. And in the community of archetypes that the zodiac is, nothing would get started without his spontaneous, impulsive ability and need and desire to just, dive into new territory and say, I'm here, let's get the party going.
Yes, and it's interesting that he's squaring with Pluto is in Capricorn, which is the goat. So you got horns here.
Stability and limitation and focus. That's what Capricorn's nature is. That goat will get to the top of the mountain no matter what, and has no need for anything extraneous, no distractions in Capricorn. See, Aries, all about distraction, because it just says yes, 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 yes to everything. Let's go, 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 go. And on its own, nothing would ever occur in the Aries energy. Only things would get started, but there'd be no sense of completion. Capricorn is all about completion and only about completion. So working together, dynamic pair.
It really, truly is, and there's a lot of debate at times between the two. It's like my rising sign is Aries and my Mercury is Capricorn, so it's like getting those two on the same page sometimes is a little challenging.
Interesting. Well, sweetheart, that's very revealing to me about your particular journey and this particular time in chronology. That means there's a definite alignment in your life journey with this moment, with your communication, with your word, and of course, you're taking full advantage of that by speaking out into the consciousness through social media, through the radio, through these moments where you do your thing.
Yes, and picking up my blog again, because I let my blog go for a while. So it definitely is, word communication is huge for me right now. There's a lot of Pisces energy out there, which is more the spiritual essence.
Yes.
of it's with that in mind, how does that does it water things down or just vibrate?
Yes. Yeah, it has wonderful advantage and big challenge. And just as we start talking about this, I'll let us all know that a short period of time is just coming to a close, and we're actually bridging into the next chapter, which is very profoundly Aries driven. So let's talk about the last, say, 2 months that we're just coming out of. We, first of all, we'll talk about the Mercury retrograde cycle that we just closed off on, I think, Monday, or Sunday of this last week. Mercury finally went direct after 3 weeks of retrograde motion in the sign of Pisces. So I know not everyone listening to this show is an astrologer, so I invite anyone who's listening right now to just sort of lean back into this as if we're talking about a story of characters, and the characters are all taking on a sort of they're all putting on the same coat, and the coat is the Piscean coat. And yes, the Pisces energy is the deep, collective, unconscious energy. It's the ocean. You know, they're the fish that swim below the surface. So just as we've got Aries the ram who we need to call into play when we've got to fire things up, Pisces is the energy we want to call into play when we've got to dive deep, when we want to go inner, when we want to go into the very depths of our soul. Now, if you think about power of creativity, and I don't care whether you're talking about hooey spiritual people going, I'm looking at my navel because I'm creating and manifesting a dynamic life, or somebody who's an industrial designer sitting down to design the new perfect aerodynamic chair, right? They have to start with the blank page. They have to start. We all have to start with the nothing that leads to the something that we create. The blank page for the writer, the blank canvas for the artist, the blank life for the spiritual manifester. Well, the blank nothing is Pisces. And it's the land where dreams are important. It's the land where connection is less important and introspection is more important. So in the last 2 months, we've had the sun in Pisces. That's the life force itself has been going for an inner dive. We've had Mercury, the communication planet, has been in Pisces saying, okay, mind, it's not time to be out in the world expressing. It's a better time to be introspective. The planet Mars has been in Pisces, so all activation, because Mars is the activation planet, was in Pisces for the last sort of month or so. Venus, the goddess energy, the feminine principle, love and money, has also been, still is, in Pisces. Chiron, the healing element, is in Pisces right now, so that's where the healing is available. And then most importantly, and this happened about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Neptune is in Pisces, and Neptune is a big, slow-moving planet that represents our access to, I'll use a word that some people will find, scary, the Holy Spirit. So when I say Holy Spirit, I don't mean that necessarily in the fundamental Christian way, but the sense of anything that we think of as the energy I connect to through prayer and meditation is Neptune's domain. Now, that's a lot of stuff that's been in Pisces for the last 2 months. I just feel like we've all been in a cocoon. Absolutely. Pisces energy is the cocoon that comes before the fiery, start of the butterfly. Now, with Mercury retrograding, Mercury is the fastest planet that we work with, and it's the mind. It's how our minds work and how our words work. With Mercury in Pisces and retrograde in Pisces, that made it a deeply internal journey for each of us personally. So just what are we in? We're sort of in the middle of March. Just think of the first couple of months of this year, especially February and early March, were a profoundly important but potentially challenging inner journey of self-reflection where not a lot was going to happen out in the world in a huge dynamic way. And that, boy, is that getting ready to change, because the faster-moving planets that have been in Pisces are all starting to move into Aries. And it's already begun with Mars having moved into Aries about a week ago. And that's, Mars is ruled by Aries. Mars is all about taking action. So after 2 months of being unable to take action, now suddenly we're all being propelled to begin taking action around the projects, the ideas, the things that we're looking to create and manifest. Of course, tomorrow, what's tomorrow? It's the first day of spring.
Yes.
And that means, astrologically, that means the sun, the life force, is moving into Pisces, into Aries tomorrow. Followed swiftly past that, maybe, 4, 5, 6 days later, Venus will move into Aries, the heart center. Thank goodness that she'll be along for the ride. Followed in about 2 weeks or so, Mercury moving into Aries, and suddenly we've got all of the yummy personal energy that we vibrate with is all going to be in the sign of Aries. By the way, joining Uranus in Aries. So remember, Uranus is the lightning flash that makes things happen suddenly. In fact, Uranus can be considered the jolt out of the blue kind of energy. In fact, there's something that I'm going to be writing about probably this week that is going to be fairly enormous for all of us within the next 10 days, is what some astrologers are referring to as the Uranian jolt. And
that sounds intriguing.
Well, honey, put your seatbelt on, because anything can happen. It probably will.
Well, see, I think of Uranus as expect the unexpected.
Yep. That's a...
And always when Uranus is around, like you said, it's the electric energy, ruled by Aquarius, correct?
That is correct. And Aquarius, not only is Aquarius important to think of this a Uranian jolt, while it's planets in Aries, Uranus is the sort of the big tight energy that's sort of governing this moment. He's the one who's providing the jolt. But you point out a principle in astrology that has to do with rulership, which gives something what's called its disposition. So let me sort of break this down a little more simply. Uranus is doing the jolting, but because his main identification is with Aquarius, then the Aquarian energy is the sort of mood of the Uranian jolt. And Aquarius is all about the community. It's all about intuition. By the way, Aquarius also rules the internet, which makes this new world order that we're creating, the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius is coming about because of the internet. In fact, they are one and the same thing. The presence of the internet and the presence of the age of Aquarius are exactly the same thing. And it is through the connectivity that human beings on the planet are generating through the internet that eventually peace will prevail. This may take a couple more lifetimes and generations to actually appear, but it's coming. I believe that with all my heart. I don't expect to necessarily see it in my lifetime, but I certainly think that's what we're building. So the Uranian jolt that we're talking about that is just upon us in the next 2 weeks is a meeting in the sky of the Sun, Uranus, and Venus. They will all be in the exact same place in the sky on March 28th of this year, just 9 days away. And that's a sort of a lightning flash of possibility where we can expect the unexpected. And because Venus is present, we're talking about profound possibilities around love, fairness and balance and a positive movement for those of us who are bringing that in.
Hot diggity dog, bring it on.
I love it.
Well, with me, astrology it really is a check-in point of what's going on for me and all the energy that's coming in. I mean, there is the general astrology of the sky, and then there's your natal chart, there's a progressive chart. I mean, there's so many ways of reading astrology.
Yes.
So if you go by just the general horoscope, is that the best way to get a general idea, or is it best to go by your natal chart?
Well, that's a great question, Jennifer. In order to operate in a level of sophistication through astrology, that is to work with what's going on cosmically now as it relates to your astrology from your birth, you really need the help of a professional astrologer. And that's a wonderful tool to utilize when you really need some witnessing, when you're really in a moment in your life when you're like, wow, I need some help. I need to see what I can't see on my own. I want some guidance from the outside. And astrology, I think, is a wonderful, sophisticated tool to do that. And what an astrologer does is he or she looks at the geometry of your moment of first breath, which is your natal chart, and how it relates to what's happening now. With regard to just navigating the weather, like what's happening today, like what we're talking about here, when we talk about the Iranian jolt that's coming up, that's the weather. It's kind of like saying we flick on the TV and the Weather Channel comes along and says, hey folks, there's a big storm coming on March 28th. Be prepared. And we, as individuals, we say to ourselves, wow, I love to surf. I think I'll go to the beach.
Yes.
And be ready to surf. Now, you got to be careful because the weatherman has just told us the surfing weather's going to be very dynamic on the 28th or around the 28th. You know, that end of the next 2-3 weeks are going to be very, very big winds, choppy waves, lots of dynamic energy. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared, that I'm being careful. Why? Because that same wave, that if I do it well and I ride it dynamically and with skill, that same wave could crash over me and send me, hurtling to the shore in a painful, wallop. And that's the idea of just navigating the weather. You don't need to know how it relates to your astrological chart unless you've got some sophistication in astrology, and you can do that. And there are some wonderful, do not pick up the newspaper for the horoscope on this. I wouldn't even go to the major astrology.com sites. I would tool around on the internet and find some good astrologers who are writing on a regular basis good articles about what the weather is doing. I do this. You can certainly, any of your listeners can check into my website at michaellennox.com and sign up for my newsletter. But I let you know, I only write an article maybe once a month. One site that I go to on a daily basis is Stephanie Azaria's column, The Cosmic Path. She's a wonderful writer. She tends to write very much in astrological language. For some people, it's too technical. I like it because I'm an astrologer. But she's certainly somebody who's, doing this on a regular basis. There's a gal that I know on Facebook named Tracy Kleiner, Kleiner, I think. And she writes on a regular basis. So, yeah, if you look to some of these places and just look at the weather report, you will get some guidance that you don't need the deeply sophisticated how it's relating to your natal chart. For that, you would call on a professional astrologer. And, that's an investment, because that costs money.
But it is an investment. Somebody that I really love besides Joyce is actually wave.net with Eric Francis. He covers the gamut of, actually he even covers the political, the physical, the metaphysical. I mean, he covers the gamut when it comes to astrology, but it's really down to earth.
I just wrote it down.
He's an amazing writer. He has weekly horoscopes and then by the signs, and he does it very intuitively as well as the charts. So he's phenomenal.
Great. So these are wonderful places and resources for your listeners to check in. And you don't necessarily, like I said, have to know how it relates to you specifically because it really is weather. You know, it's like if the weather says it's going to be a cold day, it's going to be cold for everybody. Individually, one person might love the cold, and they're not going to be so concerned about having a jacket. If you don't like the cold, you might need a jacket that day. You see what I'm saying? So the weather is the same for us all, but how we respond to it might be different. But if we know the lay of the land in a general way, it can help us prepare.
Definitely. And as we were talking before about all the Pisces energy, I know a lot of people, their dreams were very much intensified during this time. And for me, it was almost like, let's clean the slate by going a little deeper, bringing up the wounds, but I'm also going through my Cryon return. Oh, joy. So everything's all the wounds to the surface to heal them, to truly understand the very depths of what you're holding on to.
Yes.
And the ways that you can heal them by truly understanding the shadow.
You're talking my language.
So, you know, it's like I posted today on Facebook. It's like I've danced with my shadow a long time, and when the shadow comes calling to dance, I listen to the music to hear what the lyrics are saying.
Yeah.
And that's basically what dreams can really do.
Yes. Yes. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that from a practical standpoint, right? So, and this, of course, is part of what, you know, the retreat that I'm doing in June in Montana is going to cover a lot of things. I'm working with a wonderful medicine woman named Karen Trappa, and she's going to be bringing her expertise on Aboriginal tools and tips. There's going to be a lot of meditation and yoga, and astrologically, we're going to be honoring the summer solstice and the various lunations that are happening. But of course, dreams is going to be a big part of that week as well. And one of the things that I like people to understand about dream work is that dreams are operating in us, doing their thing, whether we remember them or not. So that's what's most important. Because a lot of people say, well, I don't remember my dreams. Am I missing out? It's like, no, not really. It's a mechanism that exists already. I believe it's the mechanism through which we gain wisdom, like I said, whether we remember them or not. What we know through science about REM sleep and knowledge or smartness is that it is in the REM cycle that we are processing the day's data and turning some of it into retrievable memory and knowledge, and the rest of it is sort of extraneous and sort of cast aside. This is one of the reasons why many dreams reflect the things you've done that day, because in fact that's what the brain is doing. The brain is reliving the day and taking a bunch of stuff and saying, oh, that's important. This guy's studying for his calculus exam. We better keep this information handy. And that other stuff about all that other, places he went and conversations he had that are meaningless get sort of cast off into the depths. And you wake up smarter on a Tuesday than you were on a Monday. And this is scientifically proven. What I believe is also happening is that there is this mystical element to dreams where the boundaries between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind are open. And in that openness, we're sort of dancing, swimming, playing in the waters of both our consciousness and our unconscious, getting a little bit better each day at being human. And then the portal closes up, we wake up, we join our day, we're back in only conscious mind activity during the day, but we're wiser on a Tuesday than we were on a Monday as well. And to me, there's a difference between smarter and wiser. Smarter just means I know my calculus better. Wiser to me is intelligence plus love. I'm
Beautiful.
more loving on a Tuesday than I am on a Wednesday, and therefore I have better relationships. I have better intimacy. I have better access to my spiritual self. I make better choices. I resolve wounds and patterns better on a Tuesday than I did on a Monday. And this is happening whether or not you remember dreams or not. This, the Luddite who's sitting on a couch in a trailer park, eating bonbons, smoking cigarettes, and, doing nothing about having a more conscious experience is still going to die wiser than he or she was born. And I have a personal belief, and I think a lot of people would back me up, that dreaming is where this happens. So when we start to pay attention to them and play with them in a conscious way, we up the ante. We expand what's possible in terms of that healing. You talked about your chironic return. Chiron is the wounded healer. And Chiron's woundedness relates to the childhood wound, which is, part of what we're here responsible to heal. And yeah, I think that dreams are a place where we get to see how we're scared, how we're doubting, how we're limiting our life. I'm fond of telling people when I speak about dreams, light and love doesn't interest me, which always, gets an interesting response. You'd be like, what, huh? You're not interested in light and love? It's like, yeah, no, because light and love is all there is. You know how to do that. What interests me is where people are blocking light and love.
Exactly.
Where you're holding back from light and love because you're scared or you're doubting or you're limited. Dreams show you exactly where and how that's happening. It's like the dream about someone's chasing me and they want to kill me. It's like, oh yeah, maybe they have your lunch money.
Yes. Well, it's also in one of the dream circles we discussed also the very fact that at times it's somebody else in your dream, but they are reflecting an essence of you that you need to be aware of.
Yes. I had a very profound night of dream. You said that in this Piscean journey that the dreams have been intensified for you, and they have for me as well, and for my clients. I had the night that Mercury was turning around, I had 3 very profound dream experiences right in a row. I didn't sleep all night until about 4 a.m. Just really struggling with getting to sleep. And then I did fall asleep around 4, and I had a dream at 4, a dream at 5, and a dream at 6. And in my dream at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had a dream where I was being confronted. I don't remember this dream very, very clearly, so I can't give you the specifics of how it happened, but I was being confronted with being a fraud as a spiritual teacher. The dream was about me being revealed as fraudulent as a spiritual teacher. In the dream at 5 a.m, that dream was more about a romantic relationship where there was the thing happening where something, the person in the dream visually looked like an old lover of mine, had the name of someone I was in a relationship when I was in my 20s, and then had a dynamic in the dream of someone that I'm good friends with now where there's some romantic confusion. And when I sat with that dream was about I'm failing at romantic, intimate love. That was my 5 o'clock dream. And then at 6 a.m, I had one of those dreams that, frankly, I hear a lot of other people have, these sort of magnificently spiritual, crazy, archetypal dreams, which I sometimes resent the fact that I'm Mr. Dream Guy. I've devoted my whole life to dreams, and I have them very rarely. I'm like, wait a minute, shouldn't I be having these dreams all the time? And I don't. People that I work with have them all the time. But I had one of those dreams where I was in a sort of sacred space. I was looking at a hologram of myself. So I was seeing my sort of physical body in kind of three-dimensional space, and then in all of the negative space, that is, where my body wasn't. Around my head, between my arms and my torso, and down by my legs, all of the negative space where my body wasn't was filled with sacred geometry, symbols.
Wow.
That were sort of vibrating as if the whole thing was being charged with a huge electrical current. And that was all that was happening in the dream. It was very spiritually, well, not to be punny, it was spiritually charged. And I woke up and I was like, oh my Lord, what a perfect... Well, and of course I had a horrifying day the next day because I only had 3 hours of sleep, and those 3 hours of sleep were with dynamic dreaming, so I was very tired the next day, but I was profoundly grateful for the snapshot, Jennifer, because what I was being shown was, and I'll back it up from the last dream to the first, I was being shown how dynamically connected to the divine I actually am by that third dream, where unobstructed, I had a view of myself as multidimensional, that I was a hologram and charged up with powerful and profound divine energy. And that was unequivocal, undeniable, that dream was. But I'm also my doubts and my fears. My fear that I'm unlovable, and my fear that even though I'm this spiritual teacher, I'm really a fraud. Those are fears that live in me. Now, they don't live in me in the same way that they did when I was in my 20s and 30s, when I used those very fears to make destructive choices, to, use drugs and drink and avoid and trip and make stupid mistakes because I didn't feel like I was, worthy of the life that I'm now living, right? So just because I've cleaned those things up doesn't mean that those fears don't still live within me. They do. And they need to be honored. Right. If I pretend that they don't, Jennifer, then I'm in big trouble. Yes,
you are a pretender.
Yeah. Listen, I'm a spiritual teacher. I have no trouble declaring that or saying that to people in my life. I own it. But if I ever lose sight of the fact that inside my human consciousness, there's a part of me that feels like a fraud, if I lose sight of that, I'm in trouble. Why? Because I'm a fraud? No, I'm not a fraud, but I do need some element of my humanity to keep me honest, to keep me grounded, and most especially to keep me humble as more and more people turn to me for my wisdom. If I inhabit that wisdom from an egoic place, nobody benefits from that.
Exactly.
As long as I keep a little bit of my view. Yeah, okay, right, Michael. Don't get too full of yourself here. You may be a spiritual teacher, but you're also a spiritual trekker.
Yeah, and it's the dreams that, within those dreams, it's very beautiful the way that it brought out probably the deepest negative essences.
Yes.
And at the same time showed you the highest.
Yes.
Now, in a way, for me, I'm seeing how you're balancing it right down the middle. Right. In a beautiful, perfect way.
I thank you. First of all, thank you personally. That just touched me. As a teaching moment, yes, that dreams, and in fact all self-investigation, is best served when we allow it to show us our highest and our lowest without judgment and without reserve. That our highest can be as high as the divine itself without ego. And the lowest can be where we're most afraid and most in doubt without being ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is killer.
It's very interesting. I think that's a lot of what many people are going through right now, is really sensing those lower elements of themselves, with Cryon being so present.
Yes.
Many people but it's also really letting them know that they are part of the oneness. They are part of the divine, and not to forget that. And it is, I know for me, balancing the two can be trying at times.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to stay grounded in this physical reality when I know how awesome it is on the other side.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm experiencing, because we're close to the same age, I'm also having a Chiron return, so I'm also in a process of healing up old wounds. One of the things that I'm noticing, Jennifer, and I try to incorporate this into all my teaching, is that the emotional experience of being human is part of the journey and doesn't necessarily have to be attached to some horrible truth about ourselves that we've got to go like in deep and investigate and heal. In other words, it's an emotional journey. We started the journey being squeezed through an impossibly tight space when that beautiful sack that we were floating in inside mom's womb, filled with water, was ripped open. I mean, that's horrifying. we are bloody and squeezed into this world, and then we're told to breathe air. Oh, my God, what a trauma.
Yeah.
Then we're shamed and we're limited and our parents make mistakes and our communities tell us all kinds of things about our bodies and ourselves and our sexuality and our all of that.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on.
But even if we heal all of that horrors that happen with our parents and our communities, we never heal the actual experience of being ripped painfully into three-dimensional space, into our humanity. So that, and what I'm talking about is the emotional cycles of just being a human being cause sadness and grief to cycle through us on a regular basis so that you can be in a dynamically positive cycle in your life where life feels good and you're creative and things are going well, and then a feeling of grief is going to well up inside you. And that can be confusing to people because they're like, wait a minute, I'm doing all this work so that I can feel good all the time. And a lot of spiritual teachers are out there sort of teaching this. It's not that they're making it wrong, it's that it's misleading for people to believe that they're going to be happy and blissful 100% of the time. Sometimes you're going to be sad and blissful.
Mm-hmm.
It's all potentially blissful if you don't judge it.
And that is part of the human paradigm or paradox. Are you just witnessing it and observing it, or are you judging it?
Are you judging it? Are you seeking to make meaning out of it? I've done a lot of healing of my parental wounds, and as parental wounds go, I did okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, my father was this and my mother was that, and they definitely were this and that. I was not abused terribly. I had it pretty good compared to some of the stories I had. But if my emotionality was, was reflecting that I hadn't done the work, I'd be very confused. Because it's like I've done the work. And it's no longer about mom and dad. It's about being human. This is, by the way, is why I also love astrology, because I have a belief that as the moon is sailing around the earth at the speed that she's doing that, she's twisting us. We are spinning and twisting in this soup. The planets aren't impacting us. The planets are us. They are extensions of us. And at the very close-knit place where the moon is spinning around the earth, remember, we are the earth. We are Mother Earth, and we are the beloved moon. And they're in a constant, very rapid spinning. So if you could picture yourself as sort of tendrils of light, which is what we are, and then picture that one holder of that light is Mother Earth, and another holder of that light is the beloved moon, and the fact that one is rapidly spinning around the other, we might not judge our moods and our cycles so much because, my God, there's friction. It's constant. And there are moments in that cycle where we feel expansive and easy about it, and others where we feel crimped and squeezed. And if we hold on to those squeezing moments and dig into them and judge them, they're just going to be more painful. But when we witness them, as you so elegantly put just a few minutes ago, they pass very quickly.
Well, where the energy goes, where you focus, that's what's going to come back to you. So, it's like, yes, that happened. That was nice. Good experience. I learned this, and this. Thanks for the visit. Bye-bye.
Right. Exactly.
Acknowledge it and say thanks unless you have something else I really need to learn. Been nice. See you later.
Correct.
And there's so many people that tend to want to hold on to that story and almost promote that story as them.
Yes.
This is who I am, this story. And it's just a story. I mean, for me, every chapter, you have an experience. It's a chapter. Close that chapter, start a new one.
Yeah.
There's so many lessons and beautiful lessons to learn through life that, yes, at least for me, I'm seeing repeating patterns. It's different perspectives on the same lesson.
Yep.
But I'm learning all the different ways at looking at a situation, which I find kind of interesting, bizarre, and beautiful. All the different ways people can see something.
Yes.
Or interact with it. And with that being said, we're going to take a break real quick. Again, I'd like to let everybody know this is Michael Lennox we are talking with. If you want to find out more about his website, it is michaellennox.com. We have another hour with this beautiful man. And also would like to remind you that this is a donated, supported operation. So if you really like the programming, please donate to wolfspiritradio.com. We appreciate your support and bringing you this information. And with that, we'll be back in a few. Hold on.
You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Hellman, and we are back on air, Abstract Illusions Radio. We are talking with Dr. Michael Lennox. His website is michaellennox.com. He is a dream interpreter. He is an astrologer, a writer, a blogger, a teacher. He does it all, and he's got a sweet energy and a big heart to boot. And today we're kind of mixing things up between dreams and astrology. And welcome, Michael, once again.
Great to be here. I'm having a blast.
Now, you mentioned in our conversation about archetypes.
Yes.
Can you explain exactly where they came from and really what the importance are? Because it's really, I'm finding it very much prevalent these days.
Yes. Well, let's, I'll say this, that archetypes by nature, by what they are, which I'll make clearer in a moment, have been here forever. They are by nature the energies that were here before us. There's a Latin term, a priori, here before. So it was Jung, the great thinker and psychologist who sort of is the father of modern dream work. It was Jung who first sort of codified archetypes as present everywhere. So what Jung discovered was that all around the world, people were having the same dreams. So he went to Africa and discovered that the African population that he was living with were having dreams of being chased, just like his Swiss, patients in his psychiatry office. Now, the African natives were being chased by lions, and the Swiss, upper middle class people were being chased by predators. But he recognized that they were having the same dreams. At the same time, he also noticed that all of the mythologies around the world, separated by great geography and in some cases thousands of years, were also filled with the same stories over and over again. So what he recognized was that all humanity seemed to have these similar energies that they vibrated with, including that in modern day, of course his modern day was 100 years ago from now, we can sort of tie this in with our modern day media, is that we're still telling the same stories. So what he recognized as an archetype was an energy that existed before us, that's sort of under us, around us, not quite us, but bigger than us, that sort of coalesces around itself. So I'll use sort of war and love as an example. That there's an energy out there in the ethers that's very aggressive and powerful and fiery. And the archetype of that fiery, powerful, aggressive energy becomes the warrior archetype in stories, in mythologies. So in astrology, Mars, the god of war, is related to that reddish planet that's up there. But if you look at movies about war or aggression or the warrior, what's the warrior do? He divides the world into right and wrong. Look at movies today where they're filled with archetypes of right and wrong. Now it's Captain America and, that iron guy and, all of these different sort of, do good through aggression characters in stories. That's an archetype of war or archetype of warrior. War is probably a little confusing because then we're thinking of, warring, and I'm talking about an archetype that divides the world into what is right, what is wrong, and I fight for what is right. That's what the warrior does. Love, energy that creates stories of idyllic love or the feminine principle of lovingness, Adonis, Venus, today would be, I'm showing my age here, but, Marilyn Monroe was a perfect sort of, Venus Adonis goddess, vibrating love. So there are many, many archetypes that help us understand how life works and their stories. A great example for us in America is The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is a hero's journey. The hero is an archetype. The hero is the archetype of the journey that life is. The hero has a particular experience. Generally, they are kicked out of the home or they feel compelled to leave the home because something's missing. They've got to figure something out. And they go and they do it. They're helped along the way. They figure it out, and then they get to come home and return. Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she goes out, discovers that home is where the heart is, and she comes back and saying, everything I needed was right here. Luke Skywalker is another wonderful hero in the American archetypal mythology. He recognizes that he wants more out of life. He needs an adventure. He goes on that adventure, and he discovers himself. And he discovers that he is actually a product of a combination of the light and the dark. He discovers his father is Darth Vader, and that's a big, horrible revelation. But he integrates the whole thing, and he comes back, the hero returning. Everything can be understood as archetypes. Dreams are archetypal journeys. Astrology is a community of archetypes. Every story that's ever been told is a series of archetypes acting out a tale that hopefully reveals more of our humanity back to us. And the more archetypal a story is in nature, that is, the more simple and principled it is in nature, the more popular it will be. And it's a wonderful mechanism for understanding what our humanity is and how we, struggle to become more self-aware.
So in a way, as I was saying before the break, how I'm realizing the patterns and the different perspectives through one story in a sense, but the different perspectives from the different characters within that pattern. That's kind of, in a way, seeing the perspective of the different archetypes through that lesson, correct?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It helps us, it's like if, I'll use the Wizard of Oz as an example because it's so familiar to everybody. If someone comes to me as a client and they're really struggling because life has changed very dramatically and they don't know where to go or what to do, I listen to their sort of tale of woe, and by reflecting back at them where they might be in the journey of their experience, as it might be reflected in the story of the Wizard of Oz, they begin to understand a couple of things. So let me give you a more specific example. Someone comes to me and they've just been fired from a job they hate, but they're terrified because they don't know what they're going to do next. And it's at the very beginning of this year. They've just recently been fired, and maybe their unemployment is going to run out in 2 weeks, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And I'll say, oh, wow, you sound just like Dorothy did in Munchkinland. The cyclone was getting fired.
Right.
You got lifted up, and you got landed back into this strange world of unemployment, Munchkinland. The good witch comes along and says, there's something better for you, but you got to go on a journey. That's your spiritual practice kicking in. And you came to me and said, what's happening next? And I go, well, I don't know, but you got to go on this journey. Go seek the wizard. He'll find your inner strength, and you'll be guided. Go. Now what happens to this client? This client has a hopefulness that he or she did not have before I showed this to them. Why? Because they know how the story ends.
Right.
And they can suddenly see, oh, right, I'm thinking I'm going to be unemployed, out on the street, broke forever, because I'm terrified. But I know that it's a story that I'm in. It's an archetypal journey. I'm the hero. I'm going to be helped along the way, just like Dorothy. I may not know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to be smart enough to be guided where to go, Scarecrow. I'm going to find my heart, and my heart's going to help me love and trust Tin Man. And I'm going to find courage that I didn't even know I had, Lion.
Right.
So that now the person leaves, and they leave more hopeful. Why? Because they know that inside of them are all of these aspects of their humanity that when they're terrified and frightened and looking away from them, they don't know that they have at their disposal. But there they are. And that is what archetypal thinking can do for a person in a practical way along the journey.
Right, and if they get stuck in that fear mode or seeing it, it's like seeing the flying monkeys and the evil witch.
Right. And they say, yeah, I'm terrified. I'm like, yes, I get it. Those flying monkeys are scary. So's the witch. She's got a lot of power. She has the power to destroy you. Absolutely. You have good reason to be scared. And what does fear do? It fills you with adrenaline and focus. But the archetypal journey reminds the person that they are the hero of their own life, and the witch is inside of them. So are the monkeys. They're not. This is something that comes up in dream work a lot, because a person has a dream, say, of the serial killer, and they're terrified. Why? Because serial killers are pretty scary, right?
Yeah.
But it's a dream. that serial killer is inside of you. Because it's your dream. It's not the serial killer's dream. It's your dream, which means the serial killer is smaller than you. When you wake up from that dream and you're terrified of the serial killer, you forget that. You forget that that scary energy is a small part of your humanity. It's got your focus at the moment, and sure, you're looking at it in a big magnified way. But it's just a part of you, and in fact, it has benefit for you if you appreciate what it means. You know, the serial killer is going to kill something off. Death is always going to be followed by rebirth. So suddenly, the serial killer is your friend, not your enemy. Is a part of your consciousness that can kill off something that's no longer needed. And therefore, something new can be born, because death is always going to be followed by a rebirth.
Exactly. It's been very interesting. A lot of my dreams actually have been something about death. So I look at the dreams and I figure out, okay, well, that aspect that isn't working for me, which I just dreamed about, and then it ends in death, it's like, okay, a new essence or new dynamics that's more positive that will work for me is now being born. And I try and hold on to the new.
Yes. In fact, what I would say to you and to anybody listening who's had similar kinds of dreams is you don't need to know what new thing is being born when you have a dream about death, because it's in the process of being born and it's not your business yet.
Right.
But the dream that is scary, the dream that is death-like, the dream that is terrifying is actually evidence of good things to come. And very much, you know, in your benefit. They also reflect things that are going on that may be so vibrant and significant that they need big scary images, but they are more creative and beneficial than usually meets the eye when you're terrified of a dream. One of the examples that I use in just about any interview or talk or teaching moment is a client that came to me many, many, many years ago. She was terrified because she was having a series of recurring dreams in which she was giving birth to babies and then killing them in very, very bloody, violent fashion. And she would have these dreams every week or so, and after about the third or fourth one, she was just terrified because she knew the dreams had meaning. But she couldn't figure out what they meant other than maybe that one day when she finally had babies, she was going to kill them. It's some horrible, homicidal, urge that was clearly making itself known to her. So I sat with her for a while and introduced her to universal archetypal meaning. And I said, look at babies. What are babies? They're brand new possibilities, filled with potential. And what's death but a rebirth in the process of happening? You cannot have a rebirth till you have the death, and the death is the sacrifice that comes before the new thing appears. And what's murder but a conscious choice to create new space by killing off something that clearly doesn't serve, even if the thing is innocent and loving. Right? She almost fell off her chair because then she told me she was a writer. And she was in process of writing a project in television where she was getting notes about once a week. And every week she would get notes from the network where she would have to throw out her draft and start new. So
exactly. That's
the
what
dreams were just that. The babies were her drafts. Killing them off was having to start again. And the dreams were helping her creative process let go of her babies, her scripts. And, of course, once we processed the dream on that level, she got out of the loop of the terror of those dreams. The dreams went away. They were just archetypes helping her process what it's like to be dynamically creative and make something new appear. The blank page turning into a script, that's a baby. Being told you've got to rewrite it is a bit like having to kill off a baby. And that's archetypal nature. And we're doing this every night in our dreams, whether we remember them or not, whether they're vibrant and clear or not. And the truth is, Jennifer, we don't have to land on a satisfying interpretation to be doing this work well. Mostly we just have to let it happen. And when we do remember dreams, just marinate with them. Just sit with it. Ask it to reveal more. Write about it. Share about it with a friend. You want to do the best thing possible? Draw a picture. Write a poem. Dance around the living room, acting it out. Do something creative in response to your dream imagery, and you'll be elevating the whole dynamic conversation between conscious mind and unconscious mind to a whole nother level.